Welcome to the Unleash Your Radiance podcast. I'm so excited to welcome a very special guest today. We have Siobhan here, who is an intuitive astrologer. Siobhan, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Amazing. Siobhan, I would love to ask you before we get into a little bit about what you do, what we'll be talking about today, but what is your sign?
My sign is Cancer. I'm a Cancerian.
Okay, and what's your moon and rising?
My moon sign is in Taurus and I'm a Capricorn rising. So my sun and my rising sign are opposites, which is interesting.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
It just means like an opposition in astrology, like the energies are obviously opposite. So you kind of have to work. It's like people will meet one side of me, and then only when I feel very comfortable will I kind of show my Cancerian self as well. So it's like they're not always on the same page. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. I'm so excited to dive into more of astrology today because I know kind of like the basics about the signs and all that. I love reading a horoscope, but when it comes to the more in-depth side of it, my knowledge is not there. So I'm super excited to dive into this with you as well. So another question I have for you is, what does radiant living mean to you?
Oh, that's a good question. Radiant living to me is really like when you're living in alignment with your authentic self, when you're kind of lined up with your values, and you're able to like really see the beauty in the little things like every single day. Like I always kind of feel, yeah, like life just feels like positive and abundant and radiant when I'm able to notice the synchronicities. There's just those little moments, those connections. It can be like seeing angel numbers or whatever it might be, but yeah, synchronicities for sure.
Oh, I absolutely love that. I'm such a huge fan of angel numbers as well. I constantly see them, and it's like it's great when those little moments sometimes when you feel off track or you're like, am I being
Yeah.
guided? And then the numbers just seem to pop up at the first time and you're like, all right, universe, yep, okay, thanks for the
Yeah, I love
reminder, or
that.
spirit guides, whatever resonates with you. Amazing. And I'm really such a big fan of that as well, as like radiant living, those like small moments, because I think so often we forget to really
Mm,
celebrate those small moments and just be present and like see those little joyous moments in life, where we're so focused on the goals and achievements that we can
yeah.
really fall off track from that. So that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Now, do you want to tell us a little bit more about like what you do, what intuitive astrology is, what you help clients with, and yeah, just your business and how you kind of got involved in that?
Yeah. So like you said, I'm an intuitive astrologer. It's basically the same as just being an astrologer, but I like to bring intuition into it as well, and kind of I don't want to base it too much on like the traditional astrological facts and like if your sun is here, this is what it means, and like stereotypes of horoscopes and things. I much prefer to, yeah, take like a holistic approach and look at the whole chart, also kind of get to know the person and their needs, and from there kind of guide them through their chart. Yeah, so I have a business where I kind of combine intuitive astrology with astrocartography. Astrocartography is such like a great tool for people who love to travel, people who like want to work remotely, live in different places, like anyone who just enjoys like that wanderlusting energy. And it's also known as locational astrology. So basically, you look at your birth chart. Probably everyone's quite familiar with their sun sign, which is their star sign, their horoscope. But in order to kind of get like a more in-depth view of the journey you're on as a soul in this lifetime, we really have to look at the whole chart. And so I will like take the birth chart, which is based on your date of birth, your time of birth, and your place of birth. And the time is really important because even like a 5-minute kind of difference from when you actually took that first breath as a baby can change a lot of the chart, especially
Wow.
the astrocartography things. Yeah. So I will look at the birth chart, and then if you imagine the map of the world and you imagine where the planets were in the sky at the moment you were born, and imagine them kind of having these energetic lines being projected onto the map of the world, that is astrocartography. It's like your cosmic map of the world that shows where your soul can most kind of thrive and flourish, and where your soul can go to learn certain lessons. Yeah, so that's kind of like my approach to astrology and what I combine in my sessions. I can really like kind of do anything in these sessions, whether it's looking at the journey you're on, like your gifts and strengths in this life, or the upcoming astrological weather, like what is going on with the transits, like where is Venus right now, like, you know, when is a good time for me to go to this place, you know, when is a good time for me to start my business, that kind of thing. Obviously you have free will with astrology. It's like, I'm not here to be like, you have to do this on that day or go there on that day, but it is nice to know the upcoming energy. And maybe at the end we can like also, yeah, I can share with your listeners like some of the stuff coming up so they can also, yeah, align with that. But yeah, I started my business in the pandemic, and astrology's always been something I've been interested in ever since I was a little girl. Yeah, I'm a Cancerian, so I am ruled by the moon. All my fellow Cancerians, like, we're all moon lovers. And so from like as young as 5, I guess, I was aware of like, oh, it's a new moon, it's a full moon, and kind of curious about what that meant. And then I think it was around age 12 that I started buying astrology books. And it was always something I was kind of diving in and out of in my teen years. And then in my 20s, yeah, I really started to learn more, was always like very aware, like even as a teenager, like, ooh, I have a crush on this guy, but like, what is his sign? Is it compatible with mine?
Yes. Oh my gosh,
Um,
I've so been there. I still do that.
yeah, yeah. And now I'm a bit more like, okay, actually there are compatible signs, but I think like, you know, whoever we cross paths with, whoever we kind of enter into a relationship with, there's lessons there that our soul needs, and it's maybe more related to past lives and stuff than like this sign and this sign don't go together, or this sign and this sign like are the best match. Yeah, but I got quite interested in that. And then yeah, it was the pandemic when I actually had time to sit down and do like official kind of certifications and things like that, and really start to carve out my business model. And then it was August 4th, 2020 that I launched my business. So that's also something that's kind of fun that you can do, is if you are starting a business, you can, your business also has a birthday, right? So you can kind of align that with astrology as well, depending on what you like want to manifest through your business. So I'm a Cancerian, but I wanted my business to be a Leo because, you know, like Leos really live from the heart. They're like very generous. They're always like encouraging and supportive of other people. And it's quite a confident sign as well. So I wanted that to kind of shine through in my business. Yeah, so kind of aligned like the birthday and the time of like when I officially like, I think it was like registering the website or doing my first session or something that kind of was like, okay, now it's Luna Fanilla's birthday.
Oh my gosh, I absolutely love that. I never have heard of that before, having your business have a birthday in an astrology sign, but I think that's so powerful, especially with Luna. It's like this confident from the heart
Yeah.
business, where that's really, I mean, where, you know, most people listening to this, and I know you and myself are both like heart-centered entrepreneurs as well. So I absolutely love
Yeah.
that. I think, I don't, to be honest, my business has like doesn't have an official birthday because I kind of launched, I've relaunched, but I believe
Mm.
it's more of a Libra. So what would that mean exactly?
Ooh, that's so beautiful, especially because you're kind of helping people like manifest their dream like desires and their dream life, and helping them with abundance and that kind of radiant living. Libra is ruled by Venus, so it's also that heart space, and it's all about like balance and harmony and beauty and equality, and like really, yeah, like the beauty, you know, like finding the beauty in every day. And just like from the way I kind of like watch your stories and the things you post and your content and stuff, it's always, it is like radiant living. It's like, oh, like we can have this too, you know, like we can also catch these little moments, the beautiful moments in every single day. So a Libra business is great, and the overall focus will always kind of be like harmony, you know. That's
Okay, I love that, like that balance with like the Libra side of me.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, amazing. That's so
And like balance in your life, right? Like not
yeah.
just like work, work, work. Like there's also like an abundant life is so much more than just work. Like there's so much more that comes into it. And you always share like the other parts of your day as well, which I love. And that's quite like Libra energy.
Oh, that's so amazing. Well, I'm glad that you enjoy watching that part. And that's something I always
Yeah.
talk about as well. It's like that balance of like the masculine and feminine energies, right? We have seasons
Yeah.
of like, yes, where we are in more in that do, that creation mode. And there is times where it's busier seasons, but it's also about leaning into that feminine as well, allowing that creative
Yeah.
inspiration to flow through and then acting on it with that masculine supportive structure. So it's so true. That is about abundant living, right? It's not just about like
Yeah.
smashing those goals and, you know, knocking another like tab on the achievement level. It's about really setting back, enjoying the journey and like
Yeah.
romanticizing it and like kind of just really squeezing those special moments out of everyday living,
Mm.
which
I
is so
actually
important.
thought you were a Libra when I first met you. So I was probably picking up on your, and you're a Gemini, right?
Yeah, Gemini, Virgo. Yeah.
Yeah, and Gemini and Libra are both air signs. So I was like feeling that air energy, but I was obviously feeling like a lot of your business energy coming through as well, which is so interesting.
Okay, that is so
Yeah.
interesting. I love that. I love that so much. Amazing. Do you want to talk a little bit about, because I know we've mentioned this before, but how
Mm.
can you utilize astrology and manifestation? Like if someone's looking to manifest something in their
Mm.
life, call something in, how could they utilize astrology to that fact to really enhance that manifestation power?
Oh yeah, like absolutely you can. And I think the more you get to know your chart, like I will just say like off the cuff, like not to base astrology like on your star sign. You know, like when we read our horoscopes, this is like a mistake a lot of people make. So I always, when I was younger, I would read for Cancerian, and I'm sure you were reading for Gemini,
Yeah,
but rising horoscopes are actually based on your rising sign, because how can
really
they like clump everyone together like that? It's based, yeah. So really you should be reading for Virgo. I should be reading
interesting.
for
Okay.
Capricorn. um yeah, so that I just wanted to like add that in there just in case people were like reading their star sign and they're like, this just doesn't resonate, you know, like it's, you know, it's best to read for both, but I would always focus more on the rising sign because that's how astrologers create horoscopes actually. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
You're like,
Wow.
what have I
I
been
feel like
doing
my
my whole
mind has been blown. I'm like, what? I'm
um,
excited.
but in terms of manifestation, I know because you do moon circles and things as well. Like new moons are like one of the most potent times for manifesting like desires into place and really focusing on your intentions. So in astrology, we'll always like look at certain moons as well. Like we have a Leo new moon coming up on the 16th of August.
Yes.
So that might, yeah, that's like the next one that will be when this podcast is out. And I will go into like what's going on astrologically at the moment and like why it is a good one to manifest on, but also just to be aware of the other energy kind of surrounding that new moon. But yeah, I always will focus on the new moons. The only new moons I will never recommend manifesting on is eclipses, just because eclipses, we usually have 2 eclipse seasons each year. The energy can be so strong, and I always find with eclipses you can think about what you want, but whatever your manifestation kind of ritual might be, it's best to just let the moon, the eclipse, do what it wants to do. Like open those
Okay.
doors, send those opportunities your way, close old cycles, and not try to control it in any kind of way. So it's just eclipses that I'm more wary of. And I will share like upcoming eclipses this year so people can have a heads up on that as well. But one thing to look at in astrology for manifesting is where Jupiter is in your chart. So Jupiter is the planet of abundance, the planet of expansion. It's the largest planet. So whatever like Jupiter kind of touches will like, you know, turn tenfold. Which can have pros and cons, right? Because you know, if it's like rubbing up against something, it can become too abundant in a way you might not want it to become too abundant. But Jupiter is the planet of good luck. So knowing where Jupiter is in your chart, knowing where Jupiter is in the universe at the moment, is a great way to like work with manifestation. So for example, right now Jupiter is in Taurus, the sign of Taurus. Jupiter takes about 1 year to move through each sign, and there's obviously 12 signs in the zodiac. So Jupiter moved into Taurus in May. So we can all kind of think back to May if there's been any shifts in abundance. And Taurus is an earth sign. Taurus is all about security, stability, money. So it is like a really good year for focusing on financial abundance, but also like a new foundation for your life, you know, like looking at manifesting. It might be like, you know, thinking about your resources, like a home space, or just the way that you feel secure in life. So kind of looking at that. If you have Jupiter in Taurus, then you'll be going through your Jupiter return, which happens every 12 years. And I always call that's called the Emerald year in astrology. It's a really lucky year. I just had my Jupiter return. I have Jupiter in Aries, and I can share what that means for anyone kind of born in like 1986 to 1987. A lot of, wait, I'm trying to remember if your Jupiter is in Aries also.
I'm 86. Yeah, I'm 86.
I think you're also Jupiter in Aries. We can double check that. But we've just gone through our Jupiter returns, and that can manifest in so many different ways. But it always is like a year where manifestations do seem to happen more quickly, which is quite nice. So that might be, you know, you might be feeling that at the moment, the way you're kind of living at the moment. But yeah, looking to Jupiter and Jupiter's transits, like there's certain days of the year, like where the sun meets up with Jupiter, for example, it's like a very abundant day. The sun's energy, it's like confidence, warmth, generosity. Jupiter expands that. So if it's, you know, if you want to like launch a business, or if you want to you know, like think about manifesting your dream partner or whatever it might be, like you can work with these certain days to really tap into that. So yeah, I would say Jupiter is definitely one of those planets that you want to get to know in your chart. Know where it is, know what it means, and yeah, that can really help with manifesting. Yeah.
I love that so much, that like Jupiter is the planet of abundance, because I often talk about abundance is not just the financial aspect of it. Of course, we all, you know, who doesn't love having more financial abundance in their lives, but it's all about like that abundance where it ties into that radiant living of like abundance of those special moments, abundance of, you know, beautiful nature around you, abundance of relationships, and the filling your soul up, and abundance of, you know, just those special moments. So that's really ties into that abundance energy. So I love that Jupiter kind of like really represents all of that in that sense as well. And it's such an abundance time.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how someone, like what the best way someone would go about reading their astrology chart who has no idea where to begin? Because I know I was one of those people, when I look at my chart, sometimes I get a bit overwhelmed about trying to figure it all out. Like, what would be the best first steps to try to understand that?
I would probably recommend like using an app at first. So I like to use the Pattern app, but there's also CoStar. You might be familiar with that. Just because you can sign up, and I think there are like versions of the app where you need to kind of pay to get more information, but I just have the free versions of both. And basically you put your birth details in. So date of birth, place of birth, time of birth. Like I said, time of birth is really important for knowing your rising sign, because the rising sign changes every 2 hours. So yeah, it's important to have that in place. And then these apps will basically break down your chart for you. So you can kind of get like a view of your chart and what each kind of planet means. Obviously, like the best way is to do a session with a professional astrologer, because they're going to tailor it more to your unique journey, as to your sun is in Aries, so this is what it means. Your moon is in Gemini, so this is what it means. Like the app will obviously be like a little bit more basic, but it is nice if you don't know. Like if you only know I'm a Leo, but you're like, okay, what is my moon sign? Like, where is Venus for me? Where is Jupiter? These apps are a great place to start. Also, I mean, there's so much information out there on Instagram and YouTube. I like to use astro.com as well to track the different transits. So astro.com, it's a free website, and it also has a link to astrocartography, so you can look up your map. It's the same way for looking up your astrocartography map. You just need to put your birth details in. It'll pull the map up. You can click on the line and it will give you like a brief description of what the line means. And then again, if you wanted to dive in deeper, like doing a session would probably help to unpack that more. But if you just want like a basic understanding of your chart and like, yeah, co-star, the pattern, you can't go wrong with those apps.
Okay, amazing. I love the whole astrocartography session. I know you and I did a session and it was
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. For those listening who follow me on Instagram as well, and as you know, I have a huge love affair with Spain. I feel very attracted to Spain. I'm always traveling to Spain, in Tenerife at the moment. And I always feel very pulled here. And when we did our session together, you were just like, no wonder you love Spain. There was just all these lines going across all of it. So
Yeah.
I thought that was absolutely incredible to uncover, which is amazing. Um, can you explain a little bit? Because I know when I was first kind of diving into astrology a little bit,
Mm,
understanding what the sun, moon, and rising all mean. So if someone's kind of looking up their
yeah.
signs, how would they know about what that means exactly for their sign?
Yeah. So I'll start with the rising and like go the opposite way, because that's how we kind of unpack like who a person is. So the rising sign, like I said, it changes every 2 hours, and it's based on which sign was rising on the eastern horizon at the exact moment you were born.
Okay.
Um, and the rising sign, I always think of it as like a mask. So when you meet someone for the first time, they are going to feel your rising energy quite strongly, because you're meeting someone for the first time, you're not quite comfortable being vulnerable with them yet, you're not ready to show them like your wacky, quirky, eccentric side. So the first kind of impression they get is your rising sign. And rising signs also can be dictated by like appearance as well. So this is just like an example. I'm a Capricorn rising. A lot of Capricorn rising women in particular have like, yeah, like dark hair, dark eyes, like quite like similar features. Like if you Google it, you'll like Google Capricorn rising or Virgo, like you're a Virgo rising. Virgo risings, and like I'm just thinking of another friend I have who's also a Virgo rising. It's like a very like clean, fresh kind of look. And you want to make a good impression. Like it's I can't really fully explain, but you do have like the Virgo rising appearance of like putting like looking well put together, no matter what you're kind of wearing, that kind of thing. So appearance kind of comes in with the rising sign too, but it really is like your approach to life. And the very first part, like if you imagine us having 3 layers, the rising sign comes first. Then as soon as you're kind of comfortable with someone, they start to see your sun sign, because your sun sign, it's your identity, it's your personality, it's your ego, it's who you're kind of striving to be in this life. Like you always are growing into your sun sign. When we're children, for example, we're a lot more aligned with our moon sign, and I'll share why in a second. And as we grow, we kind of grow into our sun sign. And obviously your sun and moon are in the same place. So
Yeah, as I say, that's quite interesting because then it's like it's been the same since I was a child then. So yeah, I'm curious to know a bit about that as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then the moon sign is that third layer. And the moon sign, obviously, the moon rules our internal world, our emotions, our vulnerabilities. And so we have to be very comfortable with someone to fully like show them the moon sign. But for people who have like, two in the same place, then your soul's got it a little bit easier, I guess, because it's like, yeah, it's going to come through in like a similar way. Whereas for some people, it can take a long time to get there. Whereas for children, it's the absolute opposite, right? Because they are so uninhibited. They are just who they are. They haven't been like conditioned or molded by society in any way. So usually up until age 7, we're fully living in our moon signs.
Mm,
We don't have to like put on a front, wear a mask, try to be someone we're not, to impress people. We just are who.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the 3. Yeah, rising sign is, yeah, a lot of more about your kind of impression you make on the world. That can kind of sometimes tie in with like career and things like that as well. Sun sign is just who you are at your core. When you feel like your most radiant, aligned, authentic, best self, the sun energy shines through. Like there's no kind of escaping that. And then the moon sign is that, like the last bit, peeling back those layers of the onion, the vulnerabilities, the emotions, how you kind of deal with the deeper stuff in life as well. So
Okay, that's so interesting. I love that so much. And just a question that kind of just popped to mind when you're
yeah.
talking about the ego, as your moon sign as well, is when it comes to your sign, and like I often talk about the ego and your higher self and how those are
Mm,
speaking to us and how they can kind of be in that opposite way in a sense, is like
yeah.
when it comes to your sign, is there any
Mm.
correlation with that? Like, is that something you can dive a little bit deeper on at all?
Um, in terms of like trying to tune the ego out to like get more in touch with
Yeah,
that
to get more in
ego?
touch with your higher self, like knowing when it's your ego kind of driving decisions or speaking, and
Yeah,
learning to tap in with your higher self when it comes to like your sign. Is there any way
yeah,
to kind of navigate that a bit?
yeah. So every sign has like a shadow side as well.
Yeah.
And so you want to kind of try and not fall into the shadow side of your sign. You know, like I'm just thinking about you as a Gemini. The shadow side is like, it can be like I have to be busy all the time. Like if I sit still, I'm not going to achieve anything. You know, like it's air energy, it's restless, it gets anxious if it's like not seeing results quickly, that kind of thing. That's like the ego. It's like, come on, Gemini, like you know, like you can handle more, you can multitask, you can like throw more things onto your plate today. Whereas the higher self, it's like you want to push that shadow side of Gemini away and be like, okay, like what are like the actual positive sun energy of Gemini is like, yeah, I can multitask, but it's because like my brain's designed in a way where I can handle a lot of things. You want to focus more on like the, I guess like the intelligence side of it and the dynamic energy, where in order to like fully feel like you're living a radiant life, it's as a Gemini, it's like you like to kind of fill your plate with a lot of different dynamic energies. So like your higher self there is kind of like it flourishes when there's like more than one thing going on, when you feel like you're getting to like dip your energy into like lots of different areas. But then the shadow side will be like, but you can always add more, you can always add more. That's like the ego coming in and putting that pressure. Yeah, so every sign has like a shadow, has shadow qualities. And you want to like try it. You got to be aware of that, I guess, because we all have these lessons to learn. But you want to also, like as a Cancerian, I could easily just stay at home all the time. And, you know, I have these mood swings and I could just be in my shell where it's safe. But I also have to remember that I'm here to like nurture and to like, yeah, like remind people like what it is to kind of live like in alignment with their hearts and things like that. And I need to also come out and share more. And yeah, so it's just trying to like tune out the ego shadow side.
Okay, I love all of this so much. Like I totally resonate with you, like the ego of the Gemini. Like you need to do more, results focus. Like, and it's funny because
Yeah,
I'm a generator as well. So
me
that
too.
totally
Me
goes, oh,
too.
yeah. So it
Yeah.
totally goes hand in hand where it's like, yes, it's so easy to get disconnected from what it is you're actually doing in the bigger picture and being
Mm,
more present, because it's like that side comes in where it's like we need to be doing more, we need to be working harder, but like pulling
yeah.
back to just kind of ease in. So I really love that you mentioned that so much. And yes, absolutely with the Cancer side as well. I can totally pick up on your nurture. You definitely, when I first met you, I was like, you have such a nurturing energy to you as
Oh,
well, which I love that you shared that, because I think that's so important for people to recognize that shadow side as well as like
mm,
the higher self side as well,
yeah.
which is quite interesting. And speaking of nurturing, I know
Mm.
you're almost a mum to be, which is so exciting. And I know a conversation we had before, which I find such a fascinating topic, is the talk around spirit babies. So,
Yeah.
and I know obviously being into astrology and talking about,
Mm,
manifestation and the spiritual side of things and being a mom to be, do you want to go into
yeah.
that a little bit around kind of spirit babies, if that's going to resonate with anyone listening who's maybe going to be a mom to be or is desiring to have a baby in the
Yeah.
future, and your experience with that?
Yeah. So I guess I've always like I was never sure if I wanted to go on the journey into motherhood. Um and it was actually in 2015 I was in like a hypnotherapy workshop or something, and we were doing a visualization in the beginning, and suddenly I was just at this like cabin in a forest, and there was two kids and their energy was so strong, and I'm like, no, like I can't, like I have to have these children, like these are like they're waiting for me kind of thing. And then I was still like in my, you know, mid-20s at that point, so I kind of like shut it out a bit. um but then I always had dreams, and especially like like a little boy spirit baby, like a boy soul would always be coming through in these dreams. But I was like, no, like if I do have a baby, I want to have a girl. Like so ridiculous.
Wow.
Like as in like I'd seen a girl and a boy in the vision
Yeah.
in that class, in that workshop. So I was like, I started to get quite sure that it was like the girl spirit baby that wanted to come through first. Then I think it was in 2021. At the end of 2021, and I was like starting to think about what my intentions might be for 2022, and it was becoming like stronger and stronger. Like this like spirit baby was coming into like every dream, and there was one dream where the spirit baby, who was the girl, came through and she was like, "Mom, like you're not ready, so I'm not like kind of come yet."
Oh,
And I was
wow.
like,
I've had
okay.
goosebumps listening to this. Yeah.
um
Oh,
so she yeah, and then I took that as like, okay, yeah, I'm just not ready to like be a mom, that's fine, like let me just like get on with my life. But last year it really started to become apparent that it was like everything was like steering me there. Like I had some health issues I had to like work through, and that was all around like yeah, like my reproductive system, you know, it was like all of this stuff was kind of like,
okay.
and it became quite urgent, and I'm like, what is happening? And then I would be walking around Edinburgh and I would just feel like a little boy like next to me. Like
Oh,
everywhere I was going, I felt this like, oh, like this is like becoming like he's like waiting to come through, you know?
yeah.
Um, and I'd written in my journal on like, I think it was a Capricorn new moon on the 2nd of January 2022, and I'd like written some intentions, and it was like plant the seed for this like plant the seed for this baby in like at the end of 2022. And then I was like, oh, that's, you know, you never know what your journey is going to look like when it comes to fertility and things. So I was like, it's probably not very realistic. But then it happened, and I was so sure. I was like, no, it's the girl. Like I had this feeling, and my like husband had that feeling as well. And then a few weeks before our like scan to find out the sex of the baby, um I just was like, I was like doing something like mundane, like folding laundry or something, and I was like, it's a boy. And then the next 2 weeks before the scan, like his energy was everywhere. I could like see him, I could feel him. And I guess with spirit babies they also talk about, like, I don't know this exactly, but it's like a certain point in like that first trimester where the soul of the baby actually like comes into your womb space, like into your uterus. Like obviously it's just like a little embryo, but the soul enters at like a certain point. So I don't know if that was like
Wow.
when his soul entered. um yeah, and like ever since then, so yeah, I'm having a baby boy and don't know if he's going to be a Virgo or a Libra. It's like on the cusp in September. I'm so like, as an astrologer mom, I also have to like try tame it in a little and be like, he knows who he is going to be.
Yeah.
I can't control that. um but yeah, I think it's like fascinating to think of like soul contracts as well, you know, that like as a family unit, this is like decided beforehand, like he's been waiting like all this time like for the right moment to kind of come and like join our family. And yeah, it's crazy. I don't know him, but I also completely know who he is.
Oh, I love this so much. It's so exciting. I'm so excited to meet your baby as well when it comes.
Yeah.
I do remember that day in January when you and I were sitting in a coffee shop having a conversation about spirit babies.
Yeah.
And at the time you didn't fully know. And then I remember you telling me like
No.
a week later and you're like, so guess what?
It's so crazy because like we'd also, I think that was like our second or third time meeting. I was
Yeah.
so comfortable talking about it. And I remember sitting there and I was like, I mean, I might be pregnant. I don't think I am. Like it wasn't like, you know, I hadn't like fully, it wasn't something I was like really working on or like putting out there or like hoping for, even not hoping for, I was, but I wasn't super conscious of it. And then after I said to you, yeah, I could be, and then the next day I found out I was like, oh my God, as if we just had that conversation the day before.
Yeah, that was such an aligned conversation as well. I love that so much. Amazing. Another question I have for you is like in regards to relationships and
Yeah.
astrology signs as well, is like, because you were talking about, I know so many of us, I do this too. It's like I meet someone and I'm like, what's their sign? Are we compatible?
Yeah.
And I mean, I've gotten a lot better with it, but of course, when I was younger and dating, I was like, ooh, their sign I'm not going to get along with. So that's a no, which is like, I totally get it, could be so silly because it depends on, you know, the moon, the rising and
Yeah.
all that. But yeah, when it comes to dating,
Mm.
how would you guide someone to navigate that when they're looking into astrology signs, if people are like really
Yeah.
curious about that? And also I'd love to know you and your husband as well, like his astrology sign,
Yeah.
and was that something you were kind of looking at when you guys were dating as well?
Yeah. So there are like signs that are more compatible than others, but what I think is like really important also is to look at the elements in your chart, right? So in astrology, we have earth signs, we have air signs, we have fire signs, and we have water signs. And when you pull up your chart on astro.com, for example, there'll be like a little table at the bottom that will show you how many planets you have in earth signs, how many in air, how many in fire, and how many in water. And I think it's also important to balance like the elements. You know, if you have like a lot of air energy, for example, your soul may need an earth partner in this life to help ground
Mm,
you.
yes.
Right? Like my husband has a lot of fire energy. He's double Aries. You know, I have quite a lot of water energy. And so we also like really have that kind of balance there. And I'm a Cancer sun, he's a Cancer moon, which is it's also nice when your sun and moon or sun and rising or moon and rising are like in a similar place, because you at least have that one place where you fully understand each other and they can kind of like mold together quite nicely. But another thing you might want to do is look at what planet, not planet, sorry, what sign you have on your seventh house. So
Okay.
if you imagine like in astrology, if you've seen your chart before, it's like a clock, like a
Yeah.
wheel. And there are 12 houses. And each house represents like a different area in your life. And there are different themes that come through in each house. And I always believe like our souls have kind of chosen the areas we're here to focus on, like the lessons that we're really here to tap into. And so you might have like an overabundance of planets in like the seventh house, and that is the house of relationships and like connection and partnership. And so your soul is definitely not here to kind of just like navigate life as an independent soul. Like it really is here to like collaborate and connect and
Yeah.
deep loving relationships. So even if you have no planet in the seventh house, look to the sign that you have on your seventh house, just to see like what energy you kind of might want to call in terms of relationships. So you might have, yeah, Aries on the seventh house, for example. And then, you know, you can think, oh, have I ever dated an Aries? Like, how was that for me? Did that work? You know, I often like in my sessions, I'll be like, try a Pisces next time if they have Pisces on the seventh house, and let me know how you get on. And
Oh,
often that
interesting.
is like the missing puzzle piece. There's not going to be like a one size fits all. You can also look to where Venus is in your chart. So Venus is the planet of love. I'll talk about what's happening with Venus at the moment as well, because it's like quite an important time in astrology. But wherever Venus is, that's kind of like how your values with love and relationships kind of come through. So people with Venus and Aries, for example, they're going to fall in love quite quickly. They know what they want because Aries is a cardinal sign, and it's like initiating, and it's like, yes, this is what I want. So if you have Venus there, you know, you might be drawn to an Aries person, because someone with their sun in Aries or their moon in Aries, because that's your love language. You know, it's going to kind of align with who they are as a person. So there's so much more than just being like, you know, like compatible signs, like, oh yeah, like a Taurus and a Cancer will go together so nicely, or you as a Gemini, you know, like to say, oh yeah, you'd be suited to another air sign like a Libra, or oh, don't date a Scorpio because you guys are going to be too different, you know, like you've got to look at like the whole chart. So
Oh, that's
lots
so
of different little
interesting.
components that
Do you
you
know
could.
what? I think in my seventh house, I actually do have Cancer, and
Ooh,
from
yeah.
some of the men I've dated, actually two
Mm,
of like the best ones I found have actually been Cancer.
yeah,
And a lot of my friends tend to be Cancer as well, which is quite interesting because it is that calmer sort of
yeah.
grounding. Because I'm kind of like all over the place, and like that they've been very, very grounding and nurturing. So I found that quite interesting as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And some people will be drawn to like the same sign, you know, but I think it depends on your soul's lessons in this lifetime. And like, as you unpack your astrology chart, and I do it from an evolutionary approach as well, like we're always evolving and we're always like growing more into the person we came here to be.
Yeah.
It can change over time as well. You know, like the kind of partners we're drawn to in our like teens and 20s will be maybe completely different from like our life partners, if that is the journey you choose to go on. So yeah, you kind of like, you might have like Leo on your 7th house, and then you date a Leo and you're like, okay, I've got the lessons I needed to get there. Like, where's my Venus?
Yeah. That's so interesting, because I definitely always used to think, I'm like, no, I need someone who's just like me, who's adventurous and wants to travel and do all these different things, until I did date a Gemini once, and I was like, okay, we're just like, it was just too chaotic.
I cannot, I've never dated another Cancerian, but I'm like, I mean, obviously my husband's moon is there, but that's kind of nice because at least like emotionally we can like align as well. But I'm like, if I was to date another Cancer sun, like, are we just gonna sit and just like be in the fields like all the time? Like, are we ever gonna get anything done? Like, who's gonna kick us into gear? Like my husband being in Aries,
yeah,
my husband being in Aries, he's like, he was the one that was like, Siobhan, like start a business, and like, you know, super inspiring and encouraging. And
I love that.
yeah, so it's nice to find like, it's nice to find that balance with the elements. I think that's important too. And you'll often see families, sorry, you'll often see families like earth mom, fire dad, air kid, water kid, you know, like and yeah, that's an interesting one.
That's like definitely multi-dimensional family. I love that so much. And is your husband into astrology?
He is like very open to it now. Like, I think when I started, he was, you know, he knew I was always like talking about stuff like this, and like I always like talk about the day we met and what was going on astrologically and how it was like so aligned and things. He's become a lot more open to it, and now he'll be like, oh, like, is Mars doing something funny today? Because I was feeling a bit angry at work. Or
I love that. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so key. It's like, it's always remembering, I think, that like, you know, you don't have to have, when you're searching for your partner, they don't have to be like exactly into everything you are. But I love that if they're open to it. I always think that's the most important thing, and like open to being learning more about it and diving into that a bit more. That's amazing. So I could talk about this forever. I am mindful of time, but I do have one more question for you. And then I'd love to hear about you diving into any major astrology things happening. I know you're talking about Venus at the moment. What do you want to talk about, some amazing things that you have manifested in your life when you've been practicing manifestation?
Yeah. So I was thinking about this earlier, actually. Even just my husband. So obviously, like, always kind of had an idea about the type of like person I want to spend my life with, that I want to like journey through life with. And when I met him, so I'd been like dating someone kind of casually, and I knew it wasn't like really going anywhere. This was in 2011. So I was pretty young at the time, but I was like really clear about the person I wanted to be with. And I was like, I'll know him as soon as I meet him.
Yeah.
You know, like I did have like certain qualities, but it was more like a feeling of like what he would feel like he would feel like home. And yeah, just like this feeling of who he would be. And weirdly, like I'd always been drawn to South Africa. And my Venus line is in South Africa. So that's also something that's quite fun to look at in astrocartography. Like the kind of partners we might be drawn to might come from our Venus line, or we might meet them on our Venus line. Like I'd moved to South Africa when I was 18 randomly. You know, it was like a completely spur of the moment decision. I didn't even meet my husband in South Africa, but he is South African. I met him in China, but that's like a whole other story.
I think we should have a whole other story on like relationships and dating as well. I love this.
So I'd kind of been like calling him in. There was actually a book I read, Calling in the One. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's like yeah, so I went through this book. It's called Calling in the One. Sounds so cheesy now that I think about it, but actually it really helps. Like you go through all these different exercises, and yeah, look it up. Calling in the One.
I definitely might be.
But it was, I can't remember who wrote it, but it's like it's like a workbook, and like you're reading a lot about relationships. I recommend it, actually. It helped me literally call in the One. So.
Okay, well, for anyone listening, I will find that and I'll link it in the show notes as well, because I'm intrigued also to look that up. Yeah.
And because I was like kind of attuned to astrology, I knew there was like a really like big lunar eclipse coming up on this particular day. in December of 2011. But I like woke up that day. I was like in the process of manifesting something else. So I actually like sometimes when I manifest things, words work best for me. So if I say out loud, and not in like a like my ego's taking over and like this arrogant way, like I'm gonna win this or whatever, but I felt so positive that I was going to win this trip to Taiwan. It was like this all expenses paid like trip for 3 weeks, and my friend had told me about it, and I was like, I need to apply because I think I'm going to get it. And it was just like this feeling, like I ended up moving to Taiwan like after that. Like it actually just took me into the next part of my journey, but it wasn't like, oh yeah, I can win this, you know, like I'm going to have the best application. But I was so sure, like in like my gut, that this was like the right thing.
intuition, the knowing was there.
Yeah. So I even like called in sick to work, took the day off to work on this application because I was just so sure. And then I didn't even like think about it. I put it out of my mind because I was like, I know like it'll happen. And it did. Like 2 weeks later I found out, and I wasn't.
And you won. Oh my gosh, amazing.
Yeah.
I love that.
And then that trip, like I then led me to like living there. And yeah, that was like a whole other part of my journey as well. But with my husband, it all happened on the same day. Like I submitted the application. It was the lunar eclipse in Gemini, actually, on December 10th, 2011. I submitted the application in the morning. And then I was sitting in my apartment, and I actually just like was exhausted from the application. And I was like, hey, I think I don't want to do anything. But like a little voice was like, you have to go to this party that you've been invited to today. Like you have to go. And I didn't even like, I honestly didn't get ready. Like I felt like I was like in pajamas. I know I wasn't. I got dressed, but I was like not fully like conscious. Like it was like something else was controlling me. I was suddenly in a taxi, and I was like going to this party. It was like a daytime Christmas party type thing with all the expats in my community in China. And then I got there, and I was like, why am I here? Like I'm tired. I don't want to be here. This isn't where I'm supposed to be. And I asked my friend, can I just go in your apartment next door? Like this is so Cancerian, but I was like, I just need my own space.
Yeah.
I could like go sit next door. And she was like, sure. And like gave me a key, but then the door was open. So I just like went down and sat on the couch. And then this guy like walked out of the bathroom in that apartment. And I was like, oh, hi. And like it was him. It was Dane. It was like my husband.
Oh, I
And
love this.
in that exact moment, I was like, yeah, like I can't even explain. I like saw his like it was like his smile, his voice, and I was like, that is him. And then as the day progressed, I'm like, oh my God, I've met my future husband. Like this is crazy. Like this is him. And I even emailed my friend. I'm like, I've met him. And she was like laughing at me, but I was so sure. Like there was no doubt in my mind. And even like, you know, I've shared with you personally, but even as we like dated and then we actually ended things because the timing wasn't right, I always knew, and he also knew, like we would make this work, even though he's South African, I'm Scottish, I was living in China, he was back in South Africa.
Yeah.
Like, and our paths crossed again. And I really believe I was just so clear it was him. Like, and yeah, and I'd done so much work that year on myself to kind of like manifest that into being as well. Yeah, so I think we can also just know like when we meet someone, or like an opportunity or an apartment or like that, you got to trust like what's going on in your body when you meet these people. Or
oh my gosh, I love all of this so much. Yeah, that's such an incredible story, and I definitely trust that as well. I've been there before, where you kind of just have this like inner knowing, and if it's like, it's always that like saying, if it's not a heck yes, it's a heck no, right? It's just like you kind of just know that feeling. So I love that story so much. Amazing. That's such a huge manifestation. Wow. That's always like, that's a great example of like just trust in like let go of the how, and just trust that the universe is like shifting things around and replacing. And like that's why things take time, right? It's like people need to move, situations need to move. Like you're moving countries, you're all like, you're from different countries living in different places, and like look at it, now you're back together in Scotland with a baby on the way. So anyone listening who's calling in their partner, like listen to Siobhan's story as like, you know, motivation and inspiration. So that's so amazing. And yeah, do you want to talk about what's going on with Venus right now before we jump off?
Yeah, so every 18 months in astrology, the planet of love, Venus, it's also not just the planet of love, it's the planet of money, creativity, our values. Every 18 months it goes retrograde. And when a planet goes retrograde, it's kind of like a time where whatever that planet, like the higher like moments of that planet, they kind of like slow down slightly. So it started on the 23rd of July, so earlier
Yeah.
this week, or whenever this podcast
Last
comes
week.
out.
Yeah. I think it was on
Yeah,
Monday, was
23rd
the
of
23rd.
July. Yeah. And it's going to be retrograde until September 4th. So
Okay.
yeah, September 3rd for people in like the US and Canada, like depending on your time zone, but September 4th for us in Europe. And these 6 weeks, basically, when Venus is retrograde, it's like a real good chance to get really clear on what your heart wants to kind of call into being,
Okay.
to have more of an introspective time. Like when Venus is retrograde, it's not the best time to jump into a new relationship, for example. Like it's okay to date and kind of like suss out what you want.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, if someone listening is like, shit, I'm getting married and now Venus is retrograde, it's totally fine. It's totally fine. It's just like you just want to be really sure. You know, it's a time where we're kind of going into our heart. Also because Leo, Venus is retrograde in Leo right now, the sign of Leo. Leo rules the heart space. So we're really like getting clear on what our heart wants, what our heart doesn't want, who
Love
is kind
that.
of aligned with our best values, who's not. It's like a deep clearing of the heart time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of nice just to like sit more with your journal or whatever it is for you, like working on the heart chakra. Like I find like I'm not, because I'm pregnant, I mean it's totally fine to have cacao. I'm just not, I'm like sensitive to that at the moment, so I'm not having too much cacao. But you know, cacao ceremonies, all that kind of stuff, like while Venus is retrograde, like to open your heart up more. I
Okay.
feel like it's a nice time for that. And then also just and like thinking about like money and things as well, like being a bit more careful. Like it's not the best time to have any big splurges. It's not the best time to change your appearance because Venus also rules beauty. So you might like cut all your hair off or dye it blue or get a tattoo or a piercing and then regret it.
Okay.
So I always think it's like a time, it's like a pause time. And that is such a blessing. It's not like something to fear or be worried about. It's like it's okay to slow down right now. You know, and it's summer, which can make it hard for, or depending on where your listeners are, maybe winter in the southern hemisphere. But summer is the time where we want to be more social, we want to date, we want to
Yeah.
go to weddings, we want to like change our appearance. But like, yeah, it's happening right now for a reason, and it's like really helping us to slow down and go more inward. And I think just trusting that. And then when Venus does go direct in September, hopefully we'll have a bit more clarity on like the next direction that we want to go in, and that it's like fully aligned with our hearts. So
Okay, amazing. I just had that like song pop in my head, like I'm coming out, like at the end of
yeah,
September. It's like
that
in
is
order to
all
like,
of
all
us
right,
in
I'm ready.
September.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that so much. Well, thank you so much for sharing. It's been so nice chatting with you. I loved learning a little bit more about astrology and all that and diving into that and spirit babies and your manifestation with your husband. I'm sure everyone's going to love hearing about that as well. And where can listeners find you?
So they can find me on Instagram. It's at Luna Fanula, so LunaFinula, or lunafanula.com. I am going to be going on mat leave soon, but if people want to like, yeah, they can follow me. And like, you know, when I'm back to work, if anyone is like curious about their astrocartography or anything, like they can reach out, or people can just reach out to me anyway. I love to just chat in my DMs and things too. So
Amazing, amazing. And I can highly recommend if anyone wants to book an astrocartography session with Siobhan,
Aw.
absolutely go for it because it was amazing. Is there
Thanks.
anything else that you want to share before we jump off?
Well, today, well, actually, I guess the podcast is going to be out in like a week. But anyway, when we recorded this, Mercury was in exactly the same place as Venus. So if you think back to Thursday, the 26th,
27.
20, is it the 27th?
Yeah, it's the 27th today.
Thursday, the 27th of July, and like how you were feeling that day, just in term, like, yeah, see how you were feeling, because it's quite a nice day. Like we've had a very like open, flowy conversation, and that is like very in alignment with Mercury being in the same place as Venus. So
Oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah, it's full of love, full of connection, full of flow. Amazing.
yeah.
I've absolutely loved this conversation. Siobhan, thank you so much. I'm so excited for the episode to come out. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
have an amazing, beautiful day.
You too.